after spending years of training, doing all that he could to actually break through his natural limit, or at least so he thought, Jeremy Ethier actually put on 20 pounds of lean mass in a fairly short amount of time. And I want to actually break down everything that he did. But most importantly, and better yet, I want to show you how to actually implement this into a busy and chaotic life. Say, the life of a parent. So let's dive right into this. If you aren't familiar with Jeremy Ethier, which you probably are, but he's a big YouTuber, a lot on muscle building and fat loss. He runs builtwithscience.com. And he fairly recently posted a video about his fairly impressive, it was a very impressive transformation, putting on 20 pounds of lean muscle onto his body. And it was absolutely incredible. I mean, for someone who's been training for so long, and then to see this drastic of a change is really unusual. Usually, what's it mean? It means someone's got some sort of additional help, some supplements, let's say some TRT or something like that. But that was not the case with him. So I actually want to break down what he did, and we're going to walk through this and how you can actually implement this into your own life. So starting with training. Now, training-wise, this was the first thing that Jeremy looked at. Obviously, how do you train more effectively? How do you actually make sure to do this the right way and the best way? And he looked at some more recent research that actually showed the best way in this study to actually get the maximum amount of muscle growth is by training your muscles in a stretched position. So what does this mean? So in the study, what they did is they looked at different exercises and where the peak amount of resistance was in the exercise. So let's say if we're talking about, let's talk about with a chest exercise. So if the peak exercise on a chest press, the peak amount of resistance is actually somewhere middle range of motion as you're bringing the bar down or as you're coming up. Right in that middle range is about where the peak resistance is actually going to be. Versus, let's say something like a dumbbell fly. So if you've got a dumbbell fly, you're on a bench, laying up against a bench, and you're opening up. The peak amount of resistance is actually when your arms are out here. That's when it puts the maximum amount of resistance on your chest. And that's in a stretched position, right? That's pulling your arms apart. It's putting your pecs into a stretched position. Those types of movements showed the maximum amount of muscle growth in comparison to all the rest. They all showed that there was muscle growth. So he started to introduce into his program some more movements that are focused specifically on stretched movements. Another example would be like a bicep curl. Typical bicep curl, you're coming up with a dumbbell or a barbell for that matter. The peak of that movement is when your bicep is fully flexed, is right at the top of the movement. And as you come down, by the time your arm is completely vertical down below, you've lost almost all tension on your bicep versus something like a preacher curl. So if you haven't done a preacher curl, so let's say you've got a bench at an incline in front of you and you can kind of stand over the bench, rest your arm on the bench when you're curling a dumbbell up. So there's still resistance there, but the peak amount of resistance is actually when you extend that arm down. Right out here in that stretched position on your bicep is the peak amount of resistance. So these are the types of things that he started to incorporate into his program. And he felt like he saw some massive results because of it. And obviously, I mean, we can see quite a bit of these massive results. But is this everything? And more importantly, what does this look like for you? So here's what I'll say. I am a huge fan of the new research. I'm always interested in looking at what's coming out, because I want this to be the most effective that it can be. I don't want to spend hours in a gym, and I would imagine neither do you. I don't want to spend even hours at home working out. I want to do this in as little time as possible to change my body in the most massive way so that it can benefit and bless the rest of my life. So to do that, I want to know what the most effective ways are for building muscle. But the interesting thing here is, yes, this clearly led to some muscle gains, probably significant muscle gains. It was some different way that he had been training, which right there is the key. It's different than he had been doing. So when I say this, that you want to be doing something that you're not already doing, that's going to be the most powerful exercise that you can do, an exercise that you're not already doing. Now, when I say that though, don't hear me say, keep changing it up. I don't want you to keep changing it up, because what we need novel stimulus, but we need that stimulus for a set amount of time. I would say at minimum, a lot of experts would say at a minimum 3 to 4 weeks. so that you have a consistent amount of time that you can measure, am I getting stronger in this exercise? Because that's what's dictating progressive overload, which causes hypertrophy and therefore muscle growth. So that's what you want. Am I improving in that exercise? But if you're changing it up constantly, even every 2 weeks, it's going to be very hard for you to track your progress because you're always changing. Now, let's say, that you don't do that a lot. You don't change up your exercises. This is a great opportunity for you to introduce something new. But what if you're already doing these, what if you're already doing chest flies, or what if you're doing those preacher curls? You're already doing those, but you haven't done something like a spider curl, which for those of you that don't know, a spider curl is if I put my chest on an inclined bench, if I lay against it, and I've got my arms dangling down here in front of me with dumbbells, and you're curling up to you as you're leaning against a bench. Really great exercise. But let's say you've never done something like that, or for that matter, curls the opposite way, leaning against the bench with your arms back here, with your shoulders retracted a bit, your arms back here. So that puts your biceps in a whole different position versus having your elbows in front of you. So anyways, the whole point here being, let's say you haven't done any of those. Should you be sticking with these stretched exercises where the peak of the resistance is on the stretch, or should you be moving to, say, a spider curl? Or maybe you haven't done a traditional curl. Maybe you should be doing those, because those are actually going to get you more benefits. That's why you've got to look at what you currently are doing and what you've never done before. So all of them matter, yes, but the bottom line here is some of these things are going to require additional equipment. Now, I've made massive, massive progress on just, and I guess I say that a little modestly. I should be I should be a little modest in saying that, but I feel like looking at where I started and where I've gotten to now, I feel very, very happy and excited. And I just feel good about the progress that I've made. Do I want to make more progress? Absolutely. But I've done it all with dumbbells and resistance band, training from home in my tiny little office over here. And so you can make incredible progress just with the little equipment that you have, even with no equipment at all. And what I want you to do then is don't stress about all these unique exercises and changing things up massively. Stick with really just focus on the foundational movements and be consistently getting stronger in those. And now to do that, we're going to go through a few other things that are going to help you to do that. But by doing that, you're going to make insane amounts of progress. Even having 2 or 3 different exercises, which you can easily do 2 or 3 different exercises if you've got a couple dumbbells and some resistance bands and a pull-up bar. So that's what I want you to think about and focus on, because yes, the sciencey details, they do matter, but they matter like this much in comparison to the massive amount of progress that you can make just by focusing on the basics. Remember, get the big rocks in order: lifting, nutrition, sleep, those types of things. Then worry about the details of what types of exercise you're doing, where's the stretch. Save that for a time when you've got a little less stress and a little more mental space to look into that. So the next thing that Jeremy actually did was he focused and he looked at the effort that he was putting out in the gym. Now, as someone, I feel like I'm losing my voice here. I'm going to drink my Element Tea and my Bomb Squad mug. This is my brother's channel. Avenue Studios is the channel. Feel free to check him out. You'll see me in a whole nother light. This is the logo for one of the campaign series that we did. So hats off to them. Oh, that's hot, but it's really good. I wanted to show you guys Element Tea. They are not a sponsor. I just love them that much. You can see that. They sent this to me, not because I run a YouTube channel, just because I'm a customer, because I've bought from them. And they sent this to me. I'd highly recommend this. This is chocolate raspberry. They have chocolate mint, chocolate chai. Super good. I highly recommend them. They're going to help. They'll give you some better pumps in the gym. My wife has found they helped with her fatigue. They've helped me with, avoiding headaches at times, and they're just going to help you be more hydrated. They've got the right balance of electrolytes. Anyways, I'll move on. So Jeremy was looking at effort. For someone who'd been lifting for so long, he thought he knew the extent to which he needed to be lifting. We've got to get close to failure to actually stimulate muscle growth. So is that what he was actually doing? Apparently not. He got to a certain point, and then he felt like he just got comfortable. And he just started sticking with the rep ranges and the amount of effort that he normally does, which obviously affected his ability to actually make more progress. So what he did is then he just really focused on getting closer to failure, actually training harder. Now, what I want to say is all of this is going to depend on your training age. So if you're someone who's novice, I don't want you to be thinking too much about this because it can actually be detrimental. If you're more experienced of a lifter like Jeremy, then you're going to have to push the boundaries a little bit more. Now, what I will say is you should never be going to failure, especially if you're in a situation like you and me. Life is chaotic. Life is full. We got work, family, financial stress, life stress, kid stress. Sleep is short. Um, Obligations with your spouse and with your family. All that sorts of stuff it makes it more difficult for us to actually be able to recover. So you don't want to be pushing the boundaries with failure and actually going to failure. And by that, I just mean when you're lifting, you're in the middle of a rep and you can't even finish it. That can actually cause too much damage. And it's like having a cup. This is a full cup. And during the workout, I'm slowly depleting that cup. And when I go to failure, it's completely empty. And now my body has to work to fill that cup back up so that I can have enough for the next day. But if you go to failure, it's got a long way to go. And it's very possible you might only get halfway full. And then you're starting from a halfway full cup and now you're depleting it again. So think about it in those terms. You want to deplete it just a little bit so that it can fill back and then fill back even more so that your cup is overflowing. Anyways, so think about that in terms of what that looks like for you. Studies have shown anywhere within five reps of failure actually can produce muscle growth. So you don't have to get all super sciencey about this. Just do it till it's sufficiently hard, till you really feel it. And then the next time, do it a little bit more. Do it a little bit more. Naturally, as you lift, you're going to start getting closer and closer to what your actual failure point is. Now, ideally, you want to be stopping somewhere within the range of 1 to 3 reps. A lot of people say, especially on the bigger movements, you want to be like 2 to 3 reps short of failure, something like a squat or a deadlift or a bench press. Those are big movements that affect a lot of muscle groups, and they're dangerous if you do fail on them. So that's why I don't want you going that close on those types of movements. But going closer to failure is going to provide a lot more stimulus. So that's how I actually want you to focus on this, is just by practicing the movements, writing down what you did, and then the next week just try to improve that a tiny bit more, because that's what's going to produce progressive overload and therefore more muscle. Don't stress too much about doing this the right way and whether or not you're actually getting to complete failure. Now, the next thing that Jeremy would actually look at is recovery. Typically, what do we think about with recovery? We think about sleep, which I'm very excited to do tonight. I'm very excited to go to bed. Aren't we all, parents, right? Someone shout it out. Let me know in the comments down below if you're with me. Thankfully, our baby is starting to sleep a little bit more. I got 4 kids. So the youngest is about 1.5 years, but he's still waking up at least a couple times a night. Makes it difficult to recover. But sleep, when you focus on this, it's like a steroid. So if you want something powerful to do to make your gains progress that much faster, it's sleep. But the interesting thing is Jeremy didn't look there first. He actually looked at, okay, how is recovery affected by training? So he looked at his training days, which I thought was a very unique approach. And when I first saw his video, it did catch me off guard because my first inclination would be to look at sleep. But what's interesting, it's actually something that I've preached for a long time here on my channel, if you've been following. He looked at his training days. And what was he doing on those training days? He was training for years, 6 days a week, which is a lot of training. And it's not something I would recommend for any of you watching. And what he did is actually slowly started to tailor back and just pull back on his training all the way to the point where he was only working out 4 days a week and allowing more time for recovery. A little stimulus, way more time for recovery so that you can grow back bigger and stronger. The fascinating thing is this made a massive impact on him. You can see it in his transformation photo. Massive impact. So what this looks like is a lot of times we're just doing too much. And especially in a situation like you probably have, again, like I mentioned, all these different stressors. Life is full. Recovery is low. You've got to start small. And what I would recommend is I want you to start with something that you know that you can commit to the rest of your life. If you do something massive, it's going to be very hard for you to actually, commit to 6 to 7 days of training for the rest of your life. You really think you're never going to have things that come up and you're going to throw off that schedule? So those are the things that I want you to think about. What if that's 1 day a week? Stick with 1 day a week. What if that's 10 to 15 minutes a day? I'll tell you what, own in my own life, and actually in the life of thousands of other people, and a lot of other experts that would recommend this as well, it's training actually 2 to 3 days full body. And I found that sweet spot with 3 days a week, full body. Gave me plenty of time to recover. I was super excited about my workouts because I wasn't working out that much, and I made tremendous progress. And now, just as an example, I'm only doing about 20 to 30 minutes, 25 to 30 minutes, 5 days a week, just because of the way that my schedule works. And it actually started out with 15 minutes, 5 days a week. And I've slowly increased it up. And that makes a world of difference. Little bits throughout the day are going to make, little bits each day are going to make a massive difference and allow you to easily recover from that. So what I want you to focus on is just looking at your current training volume. If you're struggling to make progress and you're working out 3 to 4 days a week, even if you're working out 2 days a week, but you feel like you're just not feeling strong, your numbers aren't going up, try scaling it back. Try dropping a set. Try dropping the intensity a little bit, even of your workout. So the next thing that Jeremy actually focused on was diet, right? I mean, that's a big place that we need to look at. And what did he actually do to make a difference? Another sip. It's slowly becoming the perfect temperature. I want you all to know it's quite delicious. Anyways, tell Element Tea I sent you. Not that they care, but it's really good. I highly recommend it. The raspberry is my favorite flavor by far. Okay, so diet, in terms of diet, what you want to be thinking about is looking at how you're eating, how much you're eating, what types of foods you're eating, right? And let's not overcomplicate this. What Jeremy actually focused on is he realized he'd been under tremendous amounts of pressure to actually stay really lean. Go figure, right? I mean, he's on social media. What are we bombarded with? And if you're following my channel at all, you've seen me post some videos about this recently. The impact of the insanely shredded physiques that are out there. So he would start to try to build muscle. And in order to build muscle, ideally, in particular for someone who's a natural lifter, you need to be fueling your body effectively. You need to be eating a little bit more than your body actually needs to exist, which means you're eating in a surplus because you need more energy to build more muscle than what you currently have. And in order to do that, he had to increase his calories a little bit. But in the past, he had done this for a short amount of time, and then he'd cut back on calories and feel like he had to shed off the fat, because that is something that we all have to embrace and just be okay with. The natural part of building muscle, when you're eating in a very slight surplus, I'm talking 200 to 300 calories in a surplus. Things have changed from years ago. 200 to 300 calories is really all that you need. The majority of that is going to be used for muscle. Along the way, you're going to add a little bit of fat. It's inevitable. You'll start to look a little softer, a little bit fluffy. That's okay. It's a part of the process. It's something that's healthy. But it was a struggle for Jeremy in the realm of social media that he's in. So what he ended up having to do, he would bulk for just a very short amount of time, barely, get uncomfortable with the fat, and he'd try to shed it off. Then he'd try to go back into a bulk, and then he'd shed it off. So he really talks about how he never made significant progress because he wasn't ever committing and embracing to eating in a surplus for an extended period of time, which brings me to the next point. But before I leave that point, I do want to just remind you again, don't let the fat gain deter you. It's very minimal. It's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things because you're going to massively transform your physique when you commit to a bulk for a significant amount of time. So time is the point. If I could talk, time is the point here that Jeremy actually found was something he needed to consider. Being in a surplus for an extended period of time. So like I mentioned, he would diet off the fat and be in and out of a bulk and never really make sustainable progress over the long term. And now time is also something that relates to fat loss because fat loss can be relatively quick. You know, if you think about this in terms of losing a pound, even half a pound to a pound per week over several weeks, I mean, you'll start to see some pretty significant results. You can see it visually. You still have to be patient and consistent, obviously, but it's going to massively affect you. It's going to affect you mentally because you're going to be noticing these changes. With muscle building, it's not as straightforward as that because it's a much slower process. So in his situation, he committed to this bulk and was actually building muscle for 16 months. So a year and a half, or well, almost a year and a half. 18 months would technically be a year and a half. I can't do math. But within that amount of time, he made a massive amount of progress. And now here's what I will say. I would argue that the biggest drivers really of the results that Jeremy saw after years and years of training where he thought he had already reached his natural limit. The biggest drivers are eating in a surplus, having enough energy, and doing it for a long enough period. Those two factors made all the difference, I would argue. Regardless, forget the training. What were the other things we're talking about? I mean, recovery is huge too, and effort's huge too. But beyond anything, diet and having enough energy and calories for a sustained period of time as you're slowly, progressively overloading, that will make all the difference. So if you're new, if you're new to lifting and you're a novice, training, in a month, lifting progressively, eating enough, progressively overloading your body, you probably, if you're doing really well, you're going to put on about 1 to 2 pounds of muscle in a month, which adds up right throughout an entire year. Now, with training age, that's going to slowly decrease. So you're not going to be able to get as much muscle for the amount of effort that you're putting in unless you want to do more. But all of us have some sort of natural limit that, we never actually quite reach it, but the gains get so minimal, it's really hard to measure. So the focus is then we have to do this slowly. We have to be okay with how slow this happens and be consistent over months and months, but more importantly, over years. That's where the biggest benefit will come. The first time I ever went into a real bulk, I did it for like 6 to 7 months. And I thought I made tremendous progress, dieted down, and did dieting in the entire wrong way. And I realized I really didn't make that much progress because I wasn't doing it long enough. But the next time I committed to a bulk was just over 2 years. And then after I only slightly dieted down, I only lost like 8 pounds during a diet, and realized how much progress I had actually made and could more visibly see it in the mirror. So you got to remember, it's slow. We build muscle slow, but it's an incredibly powerful process. And I was just talking to my wife about this the other day. It's insanely exciting to see what you can do with your body and to see what you can do, how you can affect the way that your body uses calories. It's super incredible. But here's the thing I want you to remember is that your results are going to depend highly on having an effective program. So to make sure that you're doing that, feel free. I have a free program that's going to be down in the description right now. And at some point on the replay, it's going to be up over here. But feel free to grab that program for completely free. You can tailor it to your life and to your circumstances, stressors, and recovery ability. And it's actually the same program that my wife used to build muscle and lose 40 pounds just recently after our baby number 4. And as always, be intentional. Thank you for being here and bring the intensity, and I'll see you on the next video.